Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the key tactical themes between Arteta and Hasenhüttl in Arsenal's 3-1 win over Southampton. When we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Arsenal in a 4-2-3-1, and we see Southampton starting the game in a 4-4-2. So first, we're going to look at the board to break down how both sides look to approach the game, and then we'll use some screenshots to break down examples as to how they were able to get into good positions. So when we start with Arsenal, in their 4-2-3-1, what ended up happening was that when they looked to press from the front, they would shift into a 4-4-2 with Smith Rowe and Lacazette stepping to the center backs, Pepe and Saka moving out to the wide fullbacks, and then you would see Xhaka and Thomas Partey stepping into Ward-Prowse and Diallo, with Cedric and Bellerin pushing to Walcott and Armstrong. That was the manner in how Arsenal pressed in their FA Cup loss to Southampton over the weekend, but here what we ended up seeing was that Hasenhüttl got Ward-Prowse or Diallo to drop between the center backs to create a 3v2, and that encourages Valery and Volkins to push forward higher up the pitch. So what you expect from Arsenal now is that if they don't look to press with three men higher up the pitch, they would have one attacking player close down the center back in possession, and then have the spare Arsenal attacking player close down Ward-Prowse and vice versa. They didn't want Ward-Prowse to get on the ball freely, so if they didn't have both Arsenal attacking players sitting in between him, then they would ensure that the spare Arsenal attacker that wasn't pressing would sit on towards him, and that would leave a Southampton center back free. And you would see Thomas Partey or Xhaka stepping in towards his path, and that would leave Valery and Volkins with Saka and Pepe. However, what often happened was that Valery and Volkins would push higher up the pitch, and they would be closed down by Cedric and Bellerin. And what happened now was that Walcott was tucking in centrally, and Armstrong was often dropping off into deeper, narrow positions. The common theme for Arsenal here was that we would see Pepe joining Lacazette and Smith Rowe by closing down Bednarek, and that would leave Walcott free in that midfield zone, and you would need Xhaka to shift into that zone to close him down. That leaves Thomas Partey stepping to Diallo, and then you would need Saka to tuck in a bit narrow to close down Armstrong. The alternative to that would be Diallo dropping in between the center backs, Ward-Prowse being the free man in that midfield zone, and if you have Saka stepping into the path of, let's say, Stevens, then you would need Thomas Partey to shift over to Armstrong, Xhaka would step into the path of Ward-Prowse, and Pepe would have to drop off deeper to close down Walcott. This was a consistent, successful theme for Arsenal throughout the game, and even if we look to a few examples, here you have Arsenal in that 3v3 with Pepe stepping to Bednarek, and then you have Thomas Partey stepping into the path of Diallo once Ward-Prowse split Smith Rowe and Lacazette, Saka monitoring Armstrong's movement, and Xhaka tucking in to close down Walcott. There was a time where you have Smith Rowe sitting on Diallo dropping deeper, and Ward-Prowse adopting a narrow position where Saka would step into him, and we have Armstrong free in this shot, but Thomas Partey is within close proximity of the Southampton attacking midfielder, and he was willing to step forward if the ball was played into him. And here you could see Smith Rowe stepping toward Prowse dropping to the right of Bednarek, and Saka pushing the Stevens. As Xhaka and Thomas Partey push forward to close down Diallo and Armstrong, you could see Pepe dropping off deeper to ensure that Walcott is closed down. But not only did Arsenal's pressing disrupt Southampton from building out of the back, it also led to some of their best chances in that opening half. Here you could see Arsenal press from the front with two as Lacazette steps toward Prowse, and Smith Rowe swarms Bednarek, who is looking to play a forward pass into Walcott, making a run off Xhaka. Xhaka intercepts Bednarek's pass and steps forward ahead of Ings to locate Lacazette, making a run and calling for the ball between Bednarek and Ward-Prowse. However, despite Xhaka playing in Lacazette free on goal, he fails to beat McCarthy from this position, and Ward-Prowse clears away the rebounds. And minutes later, in the build-up to Arsenal's equalizer, you could see the 3v3 press from the front, with Lacazette poking the ball away from Stevens in Southampton's third. Saka receives Lacazette's intervention and pokes it across Armstrong for Saka, and from here we see Ward-Prowse tucking in closer to Smith Rowe, Xhaka free in midfield, and Pepe occupying Bednarek with Valery caught higher up the pitch. Thomas Partey ends up sliding the ball to Xhaka, and when he receives the ball, you could see Pepe making a run in a large gap of space between the recovering Valery and Bednarek towards goal, and that results in Pepe receiving Xhaka's pass in left half space to level the game. However, Arsenal did encounter some issues with their pressing from the front, and it largely stemmed through the fact that Ings and Adams could drop off deeper into pockets of space to overload that midfield zone because David Luiz and Holding weren't dropping to close them down tightly. And the other factor that did play a key role in Southampton's success bypassing that press involved Valery and Vokins pushing forward and Southampton being able to play cross-field passes into the fullbacks to get them fire up the pitch. For instance, the corner that led to Southampton's opening goal witnessed Stevens clipping a diagonal ball over Saka for Valery pushing forward down the right touchline. And while Saka does well to track back to close Valery, he can't stop a delivery into the penalty area that consists of Adams running between Bellerin and Holding, Walcott peeling to his right ahead of Cedric, and Ings running off Thomas and off David Luiz's shoulder as the center back is caught ball watching. However, luckily for Arsenal, Holding did well to shift over and block Ings' header, but that led to the corner that resulted in Southampton's opener. If we focus on Ings, there was a time where McCarthy's clearance bypassed Smith Rowe and Lacazette to find the Southampton striker dropping off the center backs into the Thomas and Saka gap to receive the ball. To his right, Ings locates a 2v1 due to Valery's run beyond Pepe that pulls Cedric out of position and leaves Walcott making a free run towards goal as Adams occupies David Luiz. However, Cedric does well to track back and recover his position, and that forced Walcott to cut back and drag a low effort wide of the net. Here we could see Vokins receiving Diallo's switch of play out in the left channel, which forces Bellerin to shift across, and we see Saka reverting his attention to a narrow Armstrong. Saka does well to track the run of Armstrong, but Vokins is still free to locate Adams ahead of both Arsenal center backs, which resulted in Leno making a key save. And if we look to one final example, first we'll focus on Arsenal's pressing and then how Southampton were able to bypass it. We see Diallo between the center backs splitting Lacazette and Smith Rowe for Ward-Prowse, who is being swarmed by Xhaka, and you could see Thomas stepping towards Armstrong with Saka tucked in narrow. Xhaka's pressure forced the ball back to Diallo, who shifted play to Stevens, which forced Smith Rowe to shift across. But when we assess Arsenal's shape here, the issues they encounter involve Pepe and Xhaka's high position due to Thomas and Saka near Armstrong, because that means one of Valery or Walcott is unmarked. What we should see here is that Saka should be sticking towards Armstrong, and then you should have Thomas Partey stepping into the path of Ward-Prowse so Xhaka could drop off deeper and close down Walcott. Stevens ends up clipping the ball over Thomas and Armstrong into the path of Adams, who backheels the ball across Holding for an unmarked Ings, and to his right you could see another 2v1 against Cedric, and that's down to Thomas Partey's position and Xhaka marking no one when he should be shifted over to Walcott. Ings ends up sliding the ball to the unmarked Valery in the right channel, and that's where you also see Walcott making his run between Cedric and David Luiz to occupy the center back. And from there, Valery cuts across Cedric into right half space, with David Luiz stepping late following Walcott's wide movement, but the Saints right back skies his effort over the net. Arsenal, on the other hand, also encountered issues building out of the back through their midfield players due to Southampton's hexagonal shape in that midfield zone. They had Ings and Adams dropping off David Luiz and Holding, but blocking off the passing lanes in towards Xhaka and Thomas Partey. And then we saw Walcott and Armstrong tucking in narrow, while Ward-Prowse and Diallo stepped forward just ahead of Xhaka and Thomas Partey to ensure that they couldn't get on the ball. That meant that Cedric and Bellerin were free outlets to receive the ball from the center backs, and that led to some combination plays out on the left and the right side of the pitch. For instance, what you ended up seeing from Pepe and Valery was that Cedric often did make underlapping runs into advanced positions. But what we ended up seeing from those attacking wide players was that Saka normally plays on the left and Pepe normally plays on the right as inverted wingers. But now with those two wide players on the opposite side of the pitch, what that often meant was that if they wanted to get into good goal scoring positions, they would have to make runs across Valery and Vokins into the half spaces. That obviously does leave space for Cedric and Bellerin to push forward, but those runs were crucial in some of Arsenal's best attacking moves. There were a few examples as to how Arsenal were looking to build out in those wider areas. For instance, there was a time where Holding stepped towards the halfway line, and you could see Lacazette dropping into the Vulcan-Stevens gap, with Saka running off Ward-Prowse into the gap between the center backs as he signals for the ball in the right channel. And even if we shift to the left side of the pitch, it was Smith Rowe's willingness to break into that zone due to the fact that if Cedric received the ball, it would pull out Walcott and Pepe would drop off deeper to pull out Valerie. Now you have Smith Rowe, who wasn't tracked by Diallo or Ward-Prowse, drifting into that zone, and that would pull out a Southampton center back, but Arsenal struggled to create chances from that movement. But luckily for Arsenal, they were able to create chances in other manners. Because even when we look to the second half, the match followed a similar tactical theme, but it was Cedric who played a key role with his passing from deeper areas. When we look to an example, here you could see Arsenal's press on full display with Cedric swarming Valerie on his first touch because Pepe was initially tracking Diallo due to Smith Rowe closing down McCarthy. But similar to the first half, the issue here is an unmarked Walcott. But when Valerie plays a pass across Cedric into Walcott, Xhaka immediately steps forward to apply pressure and win possession. When Xhaka wins possession off Walcott, Pepe guides the ball to Cedric and he immediately locates Smith Rowe's run off Ward-Prowse into the gap between the Southampton center backs as Stevens is occupied by Saka and Bednarek is stepped tight on Lacazette. However, Smith Rowe receives Cedric's pass in left half space with McCarthy off his line once again, but this time the Southampton goalkeeper is saved by a tame effort that is cleared by recovering Stevens. Shortly after that, you witness Smith Rowe poking the loose ball away from Ward-Prowse, and Cedric instantly locates Saka, making a run beyond Vulcan's into Southampton's half. Cedric's switch of play places Saka in a 1v1 scenario against Vulcans, with Stevens shifting across for cover. But while Saka gets across the left back at the edge of the box, he drags his left-footed effort wide of the net. And in the build-up to Arsenal's third goal, we see Willian dropping the ball off to Cedric, who instantly plays a cross-field switch-out to Saka ahead of Diallo. Saka receives Cedric's cross-field pass in right half space ahead of Diallo, and his sole option in Southampton's penalty area is Lacazette making a run between both center backs towards the 6-yard box. And what happens next is Saka delivers a great low ball across Diallo and Stevens into the 6-yard area for a Lacazette tap-in that secured all 3 points for Arsenal. Hi everybody, thanks for watching and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.